Hello there, this is Tommy here on a politics show. What we're going to talk about in this show is the Scottish independence referendum due on the 18th of September 2014, which is like in about 6 weeks or 7 weeks' time, or just beyond that anyway. But there's a referendum right now, debate going on with Alistair Darling and Alex Salmond. I haven't caught up on it, but what I've realised is that David Cameron, even though he was in Glasgow yesterday, he won't sit down with Alex Salmond and actually have a debate. So it's interesting that just in the forefront. Anyway, what I'm wanting to look at is we'll look at if Scotland does become an independent country, what would be the effects of that on the Scottish people, not the rest of the UK, as has been said in the past with other people and that, but as a nation or a state or whatever you want to call us once we become that. At the moment, we're just a part of a group of islands called the United Kingdom. Remember, the word kingdom comes from king and dom, domain over it, and there's no evidence to show that there is any rights to claim there. Since a lot of the stuff comes to kind of mythical times that all the stuff's based on, like most of the Ten Commandments things are based on. Anyway, so my point there is the present referendum from the Scottish National Party, the SNP, has it's legitimate as far as the laws go, and there's debate about all of them as well, if laws actually exist in the first place and stuff like that. But let's say they do, and let's say everything is the way it's meant to be, and therefore the SNP, Scottish National Party, have actually played the game well, because that's what they've done. They played the game well to get to where they are now. And where they are now is they've managed to take on the so-called establishment, as it gets called sometimes, and they've pushed their way through democracy and different other kind of vehicles that they've had, elections and so on, mostly democracy, and put themselves in a position where they can actually ask for the people of Scotland, only the people of Scotland, to answer a question: should Scotland be an independent country, and so on. And they might say yes, and similarly, if they do say yes, then what sort of country would it be? Now, we're just going to look at that. I'm not going to look at what happens if they say no, right? So if they say yes, they've got options. The options are Norway, Iceland, these sort of Nordic countries, where the Nordic countries are sitting already and trying to work out what they'll do if Scotland gets independence, because it looks like they're going to invite us into that kind of circle. And that circle is full of rich oil countries and rich classes to a degree, where Iceland, where I was told recently, has only got one class mostly. I think there's about a percentage or 2% different class, but most 98% or so of the population are a kind of working class, but not a poor working class, they're actually a rich working class, and everybody is the same, even though Iceland had its problems. Yeah. So the thing is with it all is these countries have got it together. They're only a couple of hours away from me, a totally different life, whereas here we've got an English Westminster rule. Some Scottish MPs are in there. I think it's up to 50 MPs can hold in that in the House of Commons at the moment for the Scottish. Scottish MPs in there, and that's fair enough, and they're obviously saying their voice for Scotland at times. Sometimes it's political party agendas, but that's okay, that's acceptable, because obviously they're part of that party, they get voted in for that and so on. But there's no real independence there, why do countries have to be under the thumb of another country is what the SNP's argument is, and the people are getting asked, would you like that to continue or like it to stop? If it stops, we can go with Norway, Iceland, all these places. There's also European, like the kind of down the south European, if you like the Frances and the Spains and Italys and the Germanys and that. There's also they countries we could do trade with and stuff. They're saying we won't be part of Europe, but I mean, who knows what happens there? If a country isn't part of if it's not part of Europe, is it actually a bad thing in a way? Because on one hand, you don't have all the kind of debts that go with it and the laws. On the other hand, it could be bad for trade, and you may need Europe if there's ever kind of like wars and stuff. So there's all that sort of thing. But in saying that, your Nordic countries are quite peaceful countries, and they have less rules than these kind of more southern western countries. So these northern western countries seem to have less rules, and the further south you go, the more rules it seems to be. So maybe there's a better rule-making policy in the Scottish independence, post-independence, and maybe become more like Nordic countries like Norway and so on, which again I say are only a couple of hours away. So these people have high quality life, they've got lots of money around about them, they're very wealthy, and Alex Salmond and his SNP party argue that it would basically be the sixth richest country in the world, Scotland. Which is an amazing claim to make. It actually becomes richer than England, even once you pay off a couple of trillion debt, or whatever it'd be, a third in that. So you say there's X amount of debt. Scotland takes a share of that, say it's £16,000 a person or something. It gets paid off, and there's enough oil to cover that, by the looks of it. Enough revenue for other things like water and that to cover that, and we'll still be in surplus and profit as a capitalist society suggests we should be. At the moment we're not, we're in deficit under English government, and the English government is responsible for Scotland as well as Scotland's got a parliament, as a devolved parliament, which means that it can be taken away at any time and its powers are limited to Westminster. And I mean the primordialism of it, that means the past times and the kind of like ancestry and the thinking and stuff, it is all interesting because the primordial aspects of Scottishness mean that you have heritage such as, you could mention stuff like Robert the Bruce, William Wallace, the Battle of Bannockburn, all that sort of thing, and the English have the kind of 1066 Hastings battle, and I think that was the time that Napoleon tried to get hold of them, or somebody tried to hold them, and get them and stuff, then Napoleon later on, I think it was, he went for England, tried to turn it into a French nation and stuff, but it was all stopped by whoever it was. Again, I'm not great in the history in England, but on the Scotland stuff, that primordialism definitely kind of rooted there. English nationalism, which I'm quite joined up on, they're saying is quite strong and has a different point of view, which I talked to some English people, and they certainly have a different point of view of what Scotland's all about. So there seems to be this disconnection in this United Kingdom of what is what, and this disconnection is only a couple hundred miles apart. When it comes to travelling from the centre of one capital to another capital, it's about 500 or 600 mile apart, and that it's such a different place in that couple hundred mile, and the southerners down south would like Scotland to stay with the UK. The northerners, like the Scottish, would say, it's because you want our oil and our water. The southerners say, not at all, we're stronger together, better together, because we have armies, we have this, we have that, and all the rest of it, and economically better as well. The northerners say, well, wait a minute, we're not better off because our country is one of the poorest. We have real big deprivations between rich and basically poverty. The gap between rich and poor is massive, and like places like Shettleston, Ferguson Park, and so on, are all really poor to basically a kind of stage where they were voted the poorest places in Europe at one point. So there's all these come into the mix. You have East London might have a lot of problems, so they have their own dilemmas in England, and you could argue that it's the Englishness and all that sort of thing that's actually brought it through into Scotland through Thatcherism and other kind of timelines too, that kind of made it Scotland the way it is, and its kind of like deterioration. And evidence that would be when Margaret Thatcher that is, started deindustrialising Scotland and most England as well, Northern England, and creating the bubble of poverty and deprivation, and try to place in a service industry in place of the industry that was already there. So you can argue that that they already had their hand, Westminster, in trying to reshape the Scottish identity, but the Scottish identity was salvaged by the SNP, the Scottish National Party, who fought over the 80s, 90s to actually regurgitate the primordial aspects of the Scottish kind of way of being, the tartantry and banal nationalism, the Wallace, the Bruce, all that sort of thing, all these stories, Gaelic, if you want to call it that, and various other kind of languages like Nordic and stuff like that, in our schools eventually came back through SNP governments, and and that was later on in obviously the 2000s. The whole change, the whole shift from the Thatcher times and the Labour kind of domination in Scotland, but with a Westminster Tory-led government in Westminster really has changed to this SNP, Scottish National Party, majority in a parliament that couldn't give you a majority, and it means that the Westminster government's kind of clutching at straws when they try to explain themselves in the kind of no campaign for this referendum. And the yes campaign is obviously gaining ground, so there's some movement there. So I mean, overall, the independent Scotland would actually be okay, because as an independent Scotland, it's able to function just as it functions now, but keep a lot of the wealth that goes out of its country now to, I mean, almost, this will sound maybe quite rude to some people, but the bottom line is, if you have all that oil and gas supply and water and so on, is it better around 5 million people or 65? And this seems to be an argument that the Yes campaign has. They're saying it's better around 5. It's split better around 5. You get more benefit out of it than you do if it's around 65 million, because it's too watered down then to actually have any effect. And the argument is, if the oil's here in Scotland and the oil's and the gas supply and so on, then why not? Why not actually go down the road of making sure you get independent Scotland, and then taking that oil and building infrastructure and making the people wealthy and making the cities prosperous, so that you become almost like a mini New Zealand, yeah. And they believe, the Scottish National Party believes, it is their right to ask the question, which is what they're doing now. And they believe that the Scottish people should say yes, because a yes vote would change their lives for the better. So post-independence, there isn't anything bad really to say about it, because at the moment Scotland ticks over the way it ticks over, and it's fine. It's absolutely fine in people's eyes, but they haven't saw what it could be like, and that is the thing. If they could see what it could be like through vision of a future, then I'm quite sure they would jump to the chance to actually vote yes for that future. And you can see the English bureaucracy and English way of being creeping into the Scottish argument in a way that's very now well established and known to the trained eye, where it pretty much the same mechanisms in place, bureaucracy, and the same way of reflecting, not so much answers to questions but responses, and they reflect back the words and they make it a response to you when you ask them something. And that shows in the No campaign. It shows in the Westminster establishment, and I think right now is the time to actually have this change, because in a time of austerity measures, which everybody seems to have in our world somewhere or another, but a time of austerity measures and no prosperity, very little growth, and food banks and stuff like that, then there's never been a better time to change and shift across to a better way of standing and a better way of surviving than now. So it's, in my opinion, it's came at a right time. It's maybe not meant to come like that, because I think the SNP would have liked to had wanted 2 years so they can convince people to vote yes. But I think the Tory Lib Dem policies are actually making people say yes. So they're actually doing it themselves. The Westminster government, they're making sure that people in Scotland vote yes, because the catastrophe that policies have caused from people like Ian Duncan Smith and Michael Grove and all these people all contribute to some sort of policy somewhere that affects Scotland, and no more so than David Cameron, who I'm sure cares passionately about Scotland and keeping it in the UK, but he doesn't understand the people. And that's always been the problem with the Conservatives. They don't understand Scotland. Margaret Thatcher never understood it, and David Cameron definitely doesn't understand it. So that's it. So yes, it would be a prosperous country. People would be happier, and would be able to join on to the countries that already have little crime and so on, which is Norway, Iceland and so on, and we would live okay here in Scotland, survive well. Whether we're vulnerable to attack from other countries, we don't know yet, because armies, how the ways the army, I think we're due 8% of the armies and all different other things. Who knows? But I think it's worth a gamble, because at the moment we're in a way getting attacked with the policies that come from Westminster, and they're hurting our people, they're hurting our citizens for the good of the banks and the economy and stuff. And it's came to a day where people seem to be less important than money. That seems to be what's happened in the minds of the government. And freedom of speech is a good thing as well, but there's such bureaucratic systems there that absorb that freedom of speech and reflect it back as a little word or a wee sound, that is absolutely pointless. It just absorbs all the goodness out of freedom of speech, nullifies it, and sends out some other message and reflection. And what you end up with is people constantly saying, we want this, we want that, stop this, stop that, and it doesn't really have any effect because it's just getting absorbed and then crushed and pushed out again differently, and nobody sees what's actually been the effect of it. So that's definitely something. But this referendum will be interesting. I think they're going to get it. I think they're going to get a yes vote. I think it'll be a good thing for Scotland if they do. And we're not going to look at no votes now. We'll look at another show. But right now in ITV or STV, you have Ali Salmond and Alistair Darling having a debate between the yes campaign and no campaign. Well worth checking out. And yeah. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening. I've been Tommy. This has been the Politics Show. Remember to press the heart if you can, and give us a play, and put any comments you want. And yeah, if there's any emails as well, just email the peoplesbook@gmx.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you. Bye bye.